I think my favorite thing about mathematics is when something clicks, the light bulb turns on and you suddenly understand something. And that's really the feeling that I live for. And especially if it's something that no one else has understood before. If you've made this discovery, that is the most beautiful feeling in this profession. So I was sort of ahead of the curve as an undergraduate, and I got to take lots of classes, including lots of graduate classes. And I think the two things that I enjoyed most were logic and topology. And of course, those are still things that I do. And the reasons are very different. Topology is easy because I'm a very visual person. And so I got to really engage that visual brain. And logic because it really underlies and connects all of mathematics. It turns it from a bunch of disparate subfields to something sort of that has, I don't want to say its own logic, but its own sort of cohesive structure. And that was actually the first thing that really attracted me to mathematics as a discipline, as opposed to other things that I also enjoy. So the summer before I went to grad school, I bought a ticket to Japan and a bicycle, and it was totally crazy. I wasn't prepared at all. I barely knew how to change a tire, but here I was. I bicycled all the way from the top of the big island of Honshu to Nagasaki. That took a few weeks, and it was incredible fun. And please just enjoy possibly the last summer you have completely to yourself before you go to grad school. I think that's the best preparation. You don't want to get burnt out before you need to. So the hardest part of grad school for me, and I think for a lot of other people, was just starting out doing research. Right, you're used to taking classes where you have homework every week that you turn in, and it measures your progress, and you know that the homework problems have answers, and then suddenly someone throws you in the deep end and says, here's a research problem, or maybe even I'm not going to give you a research problem, you need to find one, and you don't know what you're doing. And you keep getting stuck on things that end up being trivial, but you get hung up on them for a week or two, and then you get super discouraged. I thought about quitting in my second and third year of grad school a lot. And I mean, somehow I got through it, but I don't have a coherent story for how I handled it. Somehow, just gradually, I became better and better at doing research. First, just like better at solving the problems that came up in front of me, and then better at reading papers and absorbing new information, better at finding new problems, at deciding what my mathematical taste was, and what's interesting, and what's new, what I can solve. And that takes years, like these things that I'm describing, probably I had a pretty good handle on them after a couple of years of postdoc. But it gets better. So I guess I was invited to be a part of this talk series as a queer mathematician. And so I want to talk about some issues that face often not only queer mathematicians, but disproportionately queer mathematicians. So first of all, I want to emphasize that by and large, the mathematical community is incredibly accepting. And certainly I've never had any problems as a queer mathematician. If anything, I've made connections that I wouldn't have otherwise made. And of course, I have various advantages. I'm a gender conforming white guy. and someone who doesn't fit that description might have more issues, but generally you'll have fewer issues with mathematicians than with non-mathematicians. That said, there are some issues. And for example, when you start going to conferences, you might notice this, that mathematicians are, we very much value the idea that we don't care about what you wear or what you look like, we care about your ideas and your mathematics. But sometimes that devolves actually into a kind of policing where, like, maybe if you are too feminine or you seem to care too much about your appearance, people will not take you as seriously, especially this is a problem for women. And I think less so as this problem gets recognized and talked about and people become conscious of it, but just know that it exists, and that for my female colleagues, sometimes what to wear at a conference is this weird balancing out, like balancing act. You don't want to appear too sloppy, you don't want to appear too feminine. What else? So you're going to go to grad school, and it's very easy to fall into a pattern where you only talk to other math grad students. And it should be obvious, but this is a pattern you don't want to get into. Find yourself another community, do yourself a favor. And moreover, right after grad school, maybe you want to stay in academia and maybe you're going to start applying for jobs. And you need to really think of, because there's sort of a pressure of you have to apply to all the jobs. Like that's sort of standard. Every job that you see, just apply for it. And you have to start thinking, like, do I really want to, would I prefer to stay in academia and live in, I don't know, rural Ohio or Oklahoma, or like imagine some place you don't want to live? Or would I rather go do something else with my life? And that's something that when job applications come up, you should think about consciously and not get stuck in a situation where you're going to be miserable. Because don't be miserable, right? Like, prioritize not being miserable in all the decisions that you make in life.